and forceful, with the ability to assemble and charge the creatures of the deep. With his young associate Barnacle Boy, fights for all creatures that live in the sea against the forces of evil.
What up, OGs? Welcome back to another episode of the OG Sessions podcast. Man, we were holding that position for a while.
Jeez, my shoulder was getting tired.
I was like starting to cramp up. Happy Halloween, everybody. This is the official OG Sessions podcast Halloween episode going down right now. And if you cannot already tell, Joey.
I am Mermaid Man.
And I am Barnacle Boy.
And together, we will save the world.
Yes. Here to stop evil right now. No, this could be a super dope episode, man. I don't want to take too much time on this intro because this conversation is a long one. It's a deep one. There's so much free game. We had a super dope guest pull up, man. He is a professional podcaster and commentator, just like a absolute just legend, bro. Yeah. Like all around, just like a man of the game, just someone who knows so much and has had a ton of experience with podcasting. And anyone that not only just has a podcast but also listens to podcasts should be checking out this episode for sure, man. How you doing, bro? How's everything going, man?
I'm doing good, you know. I did my weekly round of golf. I actually shot a 90 this week, so
ooh, okay, we'll give you a little something light.
I mean, work's been crazy, working a lot. But other than that, good week. How about you?
Not too bad, man. It's kind of same thing. Busy week. But shout out to everybody that's been pushing that new episode on YouTube, man.
That thing is going crazy.
Last week's episode is now our most watched episode on YouTube. So shout out to everybody that checked that one out. You know, it's honestly, it's been a long time coming, to be honest, because for a while, the most watched episode on YouTube was, I think, episode 53 with Broadway.
Mm-hmm. Shout out Broadway.
Yeah, and then Jesse Farrell's, I think, a couple episodes after that was catching up. But, I mean, it's been like at least 10 episodes since we've had one really do numbers like that, bro. So, not to say any of those other guests didn't, you know, push in, do everything they could, man. We've all been pushing these episodes hard, but sometimes one just catches better than the others, right. I guess, man.
It's up to the algorithm. I feel like we can only do so much.
100%, bro. And it's just, honestly, it's a game of chance a lot of these times with the podcast shit. So, yeah, shout out to Levi Without the Tribe, man, for pushing that and just, you know, helping us get that episode up there. He's a legend for that. That conversation was also super dope. You never know if YouTube's just pushing it because it's a dope conversation too, you know? Yeah. So yeah, man, definitely, if you guys haven't checked that one out yet, make sure you go check it out. But this episode is, I would say, just on par with that one.
Oh yeah,
if we're being honest.
It was a good episode. And I want you guys to pay attention throughout the episode because there's a lot of times when Nick looked at me and I could not help but just like, dude. We're having this serious conversation. He's dressed like that, and I'm dressed like this. I'm like, dude, what? It's so funny.
Bro, you have no idea. I'd keep looking. I'm like, you can't look at his bra. Don't look at the bra. Don't look at the bra. Don't look at the bra.
And then I'm sitting here the whole episode. I know. Like, trying to make sure it's
my mask kept falling off, and I'm like trying to keep it together. No, it was a really good episode, man. Honestly, shout out to Badr for coming through, bro. Definitely a great time. Let's go ahead and jump into win of the week. Knock that bad boy out, man. Let's do it. So, win of the week. This is episode 79, win of the week. Why don't you go ahead and start us off? You want me to start
you
us
go
off?
first.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. So, this week is going to be, or this win of the week is going to be something kind of specific to, like, the Jacksonville community. Mm-hmm. This whole week, in my backyard, I've had an air show.
Yeah.
Bro, from, like, I can't even make this shit up, bro. From, like, noon to 4 p.m. every single day this week. The Blue Angels are flying around in my backyard,
jets.
and they're so close. You saw them yesterday. I mean, bro, they're so fucking close.
It's like you can throw a rock and hit them. Like you can see into their engines.
And not just that, bro. You've got like the little planes out there doing cool tricks and stuff, and just like it's something cool to kind of pay attention to whenever you're walking the dogs. That's really all it is, man. But it's honestly, it's a really fun like thing just to kind of like look up and see. It's like they're super loud, obviously,
super loud, like shaking the house loud.
The reason it's my win of the week, though, is because they do some maneuvers, bro, where it looks like they're so close, like we just said, and you can kind of see, like, the pilots in some of these things or whatever, but the planes, when they fly next to each other, like, how are they, like...
So close?
Yeah, bro, it's like, it looks like they're, like, 15 feet away from each other. I mean, obviously, I know that they're a little bit more because it's just perception, but, like... Still, bro.
But going hundreds of miles an hour?
A fighter jet, bro.
Yeah.
Like, essentially, like, you're flying a fucking Blue Angel... like within 15 feet of another one. I don't know. I just watching it, bro. It's crazy to watch, man. Shout out to those boys. It's like, you know, that's got to be a difficult occupation for sure.
I bet it's fun though.
Oh, 100%. It's
gotta be fun.
Gotta be.
You know,
fun,
they love
bro.
their jobs.
Gotta be fun. It's like entertainment, really. You're just flying jets for entertainment. But I'm sure they're like ex-military or something like that.
No, they're currently in the Navy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, dope. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Man, fucking Fighter Jet Joey over here, fucking G.I. Joe
did my
Joey,
time.
fucking in this.
I'm just playing, but
Fucking Top Gun Joey in this bitch. What?
anyways, my win of the week is actually that I just got to try some freeze dried candy for the first time.
Really? How was it?
I give it like a 5 out of 10.
And it's the win of the week.
Well, I got to try it. The fact is that I got
true.
because I've always wanted to try it.
Good. Okay. Good.
So
good,
I've gotten to try it, and I know that I never need to try it again.
Yeah.
So
I tried it too. It wasn't bad. I didn't think it was terrible, but I wouldn't eat it. I wouldn't like if I'm at the gas station. I'm not choosing that over.
it's not that it's bad. Like the flavor's fine. I'm just big on texture. Like I don't know. It's
Also,
too airy, and you got to like get all your spit in it to make it feel like what
no,
it was.
I feel
It's like,
you.
yeah.
I feel you. And it's fucking disgusting.
I know.
But you know, all the people that are listening to this episode, obviously this is our Halloween special. Our guest will also be wearing a Halloween costume. And to make it even better, we are ranking our top 3 favorite Halloween candies at the end of the episode. So make sure you guys stick around for that. Let's go ahead and jump right into this thing. Mermaid Man. Mermaid Man. Wake up.
Oh, whoa! Where are we?
Man, this boy is in full character for y'all, man. This episode is going to be dope. All of you guys, make sure you're staying tuned in for this one. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys drop a 5-star rating on all the platforms you're listening to. Let's jump right into it, man. I'm excited.
Let's do it.
What up, what up, what up, OGs? Happy Halloween. Today we are joined with professional podcaster and moderator, the man himself, Badr Milligan.
Ooh, I was hoping I was going to get some air horns. I love me a good air horns on a
How
podcast.
it goes, bro. This is OG Sessions, man. Every guest gets an
Hell
hour.
yeah. What's up? Man, this is awesome.
Dude, how you feeling, bro?
I'm feeling good. I'm not going to lie. I feel a little betrayed, if I'm being real with you, Nick. And that's because these oranges ain't real. This whole time.
We're exposed.
They
Damn.
look real though,
Okay,
don't
I'm
they?
gonna tell you.
No, they
one
do.
thing.
They look mad real.
I'm
Like,
gonna tell you one thing, man.
Hit it.
You know, once you get to the 20th episode, you stop with the real oranges. I'm
No,
gonna just tell you
that's
that
right.
because
That's fair.
you know, budget. It doesn't. You can't get enough oranges. It doesn't fit in the budget, bro.
And
They
I don't
only
even
last-
like oranges, so I'm not going to eat them. You know?
No way.
Yeah, I don't like oranges.
Really?
No way.
Yep. So I
did
would have
not
never
know
even
this.
picked them up. They could have been real this whole time. I would have never known because I ain't gonna pick them up.
You're right. Look, to carve out a orange budget is insanely Florida. That's like almost too Florida. You're like, come on, an orange budget?
No, 100%, bro. That's a good point. So let's go ahead and address the costumes. Obviously, me and Joe, you guys heard in the intro, Mermaid Man, Barnacle Boy. Badr, who are you, brother?
Dude, I'm in my Sunday best. I'm Hercule from Dragon Ball. I didn't even have to say that
Let's
because
fucking
Oh,
go.
give me that. All right, I'm Hercule from Dragon Ball Z, a.k.a. the world champion, all right? Yeah.
Air horns all day.
That is
man.
so dope, bro. Yeah, and you can tell right off the rip, too. You rock that character, bro.
I appreciate it, man. I wore this for the first time to a GAM event. It's this local a charity company that's based around like video games, and they used to do these huge parties every year. And one year they did and it was themed after a different video game franchise. And one year they did it after Dragon Ball Z. And I showed up in Hercule, and I had the time of, I like really got into character. I was like hoarse the next morning because the character does a lot of yelling. He's very braggadocious. You know, he'd make for a great podcast host if he was real, you know?
That's so funny.
The world
bro.
champion Hercule, Mr. Satan. Yeah.
What do you mean if he was real? He's sitting right there.
What are you talking about, bro? He's here.
I appreciate it.
That's funny, bro. You're a big comic book guy. Like that's
Oh, yeah, big time.
that's your passion for sure, man. And it's super cool to watch the steps you made with your podcast, which is quick shout out. That's the Short Box,
Yes, sir. The Short Box Podcast.
Short Box podcast, and you're in. I mean, honestly, bro, I've done some deep diving with that pod. Like you've done some time in this game, bro.
Oh, for sure.
It is insane. And just watching your episodes, though, you're such a great host. You can tell that you've definitely got experience with this shit. And yeah, dude, shout out to you, bro. I love listening to your podcast, man. It's really, really something cool.
The compliments are genuine, and I'm genuinely like, yo, thank you. But also sitting in front of Barnacle Barnacle Boy and Starman is insane.
So it means even more, right?
Yeah, it is. I'm like, wow, I'm really living my childhood dream. All right.
What got you into podcasting? Like, what was that big step that you're like, okay, let me start this podcast?
Okay. Yeah. So I'd have to flash back to like 2011, 2012 when I first started like hearing about podcasts. Like the first podcast I ever listened to was a comic book one done by Kevin Smith. he had one called Fat Man on Batman. And all he would talk about is Batman. He would interview like famous Batman writers, like the people that created the cartoon, the movies. Like all he would do is talk Batman. So that was one of the first one I ever heard. And the other one was called Juan Epstein. It was like the first hip hop podcast ever. And it was done by Peter Rosenberg and DJ Cypher Sounds. And it was, those are like the two things I love the most, hip hop and comic books. So they got my start. But around that time, I was also working at a comic book shop here in town. And it was myself and my best friend, Drew. We both worked the shop. We worked for like store credit. We didn't work for like money at all. It was just store credit. Yeah. And so we got to know like a lot of the customers that came in. And there was one customer in particular. His name was Walter Gant, a.k.a. at the time we called him hip hop because he was he just exuded hip hop. He was cool as hell. He had like a encyclopedic knowledge of just everything, sports, movies, comic books, obviously, hip hop. Like he was just so cool. So anytime me and Drew were working together, Walt would kind of come into the shop while we were working. And we would have like conversations for like 2, 3, 4 hours. Like we would close down the shop and we would just like hang out in front of the store for hours just talking. And Walt started doing podcasting for another group of friends. It was like a comedy podcast about like their work lives, like, just blowing steam after like they'd record on Friday. So it'd be funnier because it'd be like after a wild work week, it was him and his co-host. They would share like the craziest stories from work. So they had that podcast going and the guy that ran it, and the name of that podcast was called the Side Hustle. So that was like my third podcast I listened to because Walt was on it. And to me, they were like the funniest people ever. And they were good friends too. Well, the guy who ran it named Scott, who owned the equipment, he was in a band, so he had like all this audio equipment in his garage, which looked like a barn. So he would record his podcast out of there, and he offered Walt like, "Hey, if you want to like do a podcast of your own, like the equipment's here, I'll show you how to do it." And Walt came to me and Drew with the idea of like, "Hey, we should do this podcast thing. We should talk comic books and music because that's all we would ever talk anyways." So in the summer of 2012, like we started just recording. Like we just recorded a bunch of episodes. They had no direction whatsoever. They were terrible. And then in December 12th, 2012, we published our first episode ever. So long story short, to answer your question, it was like me finding out about podcasts and like this medium. And, it was still like really new. Like I was only me and a handful of people that I knew even heard of podcasts. Mm-hmm. And then just the right opportunity, like our best friend was already doing a show that we loved, and we had an opportunity to kind of do something like it. Yeah. It just, everything kind of fit together.
Yeah.
That's super interesting, bro. Yeah. I mean, 2012.
That's
like,
that's a long time ago.
Like, think about that, bro. I mean, you've been podcasting for a minute, bro.
Yeah.
And that was the short box that you did.
Yeah, it was the short box.
That's so cool.
Man, we were so gung-ho about at least me and Drew were so gung-ho about recording, having the opportunity to get in front of mics and record. We hadn't even planned anything. I remember like Scott walking in and he was like, "All right, you press record here, watch your levels here." I've never been in front of a mic. I didn't know what a mixer was. And he was like, "Oh, by the way, what's the name of your show?" And we hadn't even discussed the show. Like we were putting the, what is the cart in front of the horse. We were so excited just to do it. We were like, and I remember looking around and it's kind of hazy now, the details, but I think I looked at Walt and I might have said the short box, and I looked around just to make sure everything was cool, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that's cool, that's cool." So that's what we ran with, So that was kind of like the origin of the short box. What does
a short box mean? Like, what does that mean to you?
Good question, because in hindsight, when I think about after all these years of things I could have maybe done better in the beginning, I think I maybe would have chosen a different name, one that's a little more easier to understand. Oh, that's comic books, or you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But a short box is something that all comic collectors know what it is. It's just a white cardboard box that you hold your comic books in. They come in different sizes. A short box holds maybe 100. Then there's a long box which will hold 200 to 400. I think depending on if you got them bagged and boarded. So it was the first thing that came to mind. But it's so niche. Like you got to be in the you got to at least have collected comics to have bought a short box. Know. So comic fans know what it is off the rip, and they kind of like, "Oh, that's a nice little nod." But usually I've got to explain it to like the general, general audience.
Like me and Nick. I don't know about Nick. I don't really read comics.
But
like
to be
that.
fair, it doesn't scream like, "Hey, I'm a." It's not like
Right.
the Marvel show, whatever it
Exactly.
is. So, but that's how ingrained we were with like the culture. Then we were working at a shop, like we lived and breathed it. We didn't even care to get paid. We just liked being around it and talking about it. And at the time that we were working the shop, it was like a crazy renaissance for comic books, especially like independent comic books. Because a lot of people, when they think comics, they think the Marvel comics, the DC comics. But there's some of the best comic books are indie created, like that folks that aren't attached to these big brands that are telling their stories, creating original characters. And at that time, a different publisher called Image Comics was going through a crazy renaissance where every month they were dropping a new book that was amazing, amazing art, really well written, original stories like anyone could get into. Like we were seeing a lot of like new blood coming to the shop that didn't care for the superhero stuff, that just wanted like good comics. So like it was just such a good amalgam at that time of working in a shop, exciting new comic books coming out. And then, me, and at that time I had just graduated high school. So I was kind of like just getting into the world, like going out and meeting people and stuff like that.
Do you think you still have the same passion as you did back then, like when for comics? And
It's really hard. I just came back from New York Comic Con last weekend, and that was like a jolt of energy where I was like, wow, I forgot how much I really do love this at the base. But after you've been doing it so long, and like I've got other interests. I think because I've made comic books kind of like my work, it doesn't have the same,
True.
It doesn't have the same I don't know, it doesn't have the same innocence or appeal as it was when I was young, where I wasn't worrying about, lining up interviews, having to read to talk about books. And, and just life happens too. Like reading comic books isn't a priority. It's just like reading a book. You make time for it because you like doing it, but it's not always a priority. And as I've gotten busier, it's just gotten harder to read. I've really got to be conscious about, okay, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't come naturally anymore. But sure. I do still love the medium a lot. And I think podcasting has made me appreciate it much more than just like a fan. Like I've gotten to interview like some like just creative ass. Am I allowed to? This I can
Of course, bro.
Say what you want.
I've interviewed some of the like most creative motherfuckers in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like writers and especially artists. Like the way they see things, and it's funny how like a lot of artists I've met are just very shy. But the stuff they put on the paper is wild. It'll blow your mind, and you're like, wow, you're the shyest, most tame person I've ever met. So it's made me appreciate it as like an art form. I really do view comic books like as an art form. And to me, it's like the best way to tell a story. You're telling a story with visuals too. It's like enjoying a painting and a really good book together when it's done right. To me, it scratches both of those, where it's like engaging mentally, but also visually stimulating. And sometimes, maybe the story isn't as good, but the art is amazing. And I love art. I've always loved art as a kid. I drew. I worked in a museum as a museum guard for a little bit. Like art has always been my thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
What museum was it? What kind of museum?
I worked at the Cumberland Museum as a museum guard. I like to think we were just like paid witnesses. Like we were
Paid witnesses? What do you mean? What were you witnessing?
I was like a college kid. I wasn't going to stop no one from like stealing artwork. I was going to tell someone like, excuse me, 911. Yeah, someone's stealing art. Yeah, the museum guard's calling you.
Did it ever happen?
No, not at all. It was such a tame museum. The Cumberland Museum was one of the best jobs I ever had. It was a fantastic place, and it really got me thinking about, just art in a different way and appreciating it. When you work in a museum and, and just surround, I was working 20, 25 hours a week doing school, but, there was no way it didn't rub off on me. I would work events where like world famous artists would come in, and for me, I'm just like a punk college kid. I didn't care. I was like, I should be out and about right now. It's a Friday night. But that stuff, just the things I got exposed to, like the people and just the people that come in to appreciate the art, our customers and our guests, it just made me appreciate art in a different way.
Yeah.
I like that, bro. And you've been podcasting for over a decade. Is there anything looking back? Like I know just for me in these past 2 years of us doing this podcast, it's like I've learned so many things, and I wish I could go back and kind of like maybe not like I wouldn't change anything about the journey, but I would definitely go back and maybe like tweak some things or something like I wish I had done differently that maybe would have just made the show be at a different point right now. Yeah. Is there anything that you would change about your show?
Oh my God, do we got another 3-hour podcast? We could actually start a podcast called Things I Would Change About My 12 Years in No, there's definitely a lot of things I would I would do. But you know what they say, man, everything happens for a reason. And the road where I'm at now in my career is because of all those things. But in hindsight, and especially seeing how fast, or where podcasting in general is today and how easy it is, as far as the barrier to entry, there's nothing that easy about podcasting. If you want to be good, it's not that easy. But like some of the tools that are out, the way you can make certain processes flow quicker, it took me a long time to just kind of embrace technology. I was, for the longest time, I want to say for the first 6 years of that podcast, of the Short Box, I was editing my shows, if you can even call it editing. I wouldn't. Where I'm at now, not at all. I was making my podcast in Windows Movie Maker, and I remember it was like the XP version, like Windows XP version of Windows Movie Maker. Even though I had maybe Windows 9 or 10, I would purposely go to XP because it was so bare basic, and I didn't want to learn editing. And then eventually I got into Audacity, and then I got into production, and you know what I'm saying? So I think to answer your question, it would be learning the technology, learning technology quicker, adopting it faster and making it easier to create podcasts, where maybe if I had adopted better technology early on, I could have really gotten our production to where it needed to be, to maybe where it was a little more respectable and it didn't feel like such a hobby thing. And, and just work process wise, I think I would have dedicated a little more time when I had the energy and the time to just focus on it to make it better. And honestly, it took until the pandemic and working from home full time, because I was lucky enough to where I shifted into working from home full time. So I had more time to be at home and learn, watch YouTube videos about production. I don't know. It's because we started transitioning to remote interviews, and I didn't like the sound of my first remote interview. I hated it. I was like, man, this sounds terrible. And it forced me to look up different techniques to make it better. And then I was like, well, I guess I can make this better while I'm at it. I guess I can, do some just basic ass, editing. But now I'm really into production. But now it just takes a while because I'm so addicted to it. And I think, I should have just kind of learned it early on.
No, dude, I totally agree. And with me, I'm not going to lie. There's certain processes with this podcast shit where I'm like, there's got to be an easier way. And I'll go look up certain things, or I'll look up on YouTube how to do this easier, how to maybe make this happen a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
And it's just, if you want your podcast to come out crisp in the way you want it, for me, I'm so OCD with this shit. So it's for me, when I'm editing a podcast, it's if there's a part that I don't want in there, or there's a part that I'll figure out a way to make it fit.
Oh, for sure.
And I'll make it flow good. It'll take 3 hours for me to find a good transition point in the episode.
I have constructed full on sentences out of because I'm I don't like the way I worded that, and I know I can cut these words and it'll be smoother. And that's what I'm saying is that's just kind of my nature is I'm very kind of over analytical, overthinking. So my editing sometimes takes longer than it maybe should be. But I just got to think a little more about your question and some of the bigger, because I've got a bunch of small little tips and things I would change. But I'm thinking macro level, and I think maybe just early on not seeing it so much as just a local thing. I think I really looked at podcasting as something small. I was only doing it for my friends. Maybe some of the people that that came into that shop would want to check it out. I was thinking real small, just Jacksonville only. And then when I started thinking about it, well, that's the beauty of podcasting, is anyone around the world can hear it, Mm-hmm. And I think when I started seeing emails and letters come in from people in different states, and then eventually this year, there was this dude from New Zealand that ended up joining I think his name is Matt Godwin. Shout out to Matt Godwin. But, I just started seeing our reach expand, and that's when I started thinking bigger of okay, let me really take this a little serious. I wish I would have taken it serious earlier on, because really early on it was just so hyper focused on just this, it's just a thing I do with my friends.
Yeah.
But now I look at the industry and it's holy moly, some people this is their full-time job. We were talking about Joe Rogan deals and Spotify exclusives and how it is a legit industry. I went out to Podcast Movement in Denver, the big podcast conference over the summer. And, it's Amazon is there. Spotify is there. The biggest Roadcaster is there. All these big companies. And I'm man, podcasting, all for podcasting. when I started, I had to tell people, oh, that purple icon on your iPhone, yeah, that's a podcast app, and there's things that there's shows on there you can listen to. You know what I'm saying? Now it's like
no way.
Bro,
what is it? Yeah. Never clicked on that.
No, it's so funny. I mean, that's how I still like. There's still people out there that when you say podcast, they don't understand. Like they've heard it before, but they don't know what you're talking about. And
it's nowhere near as bad as like before.
No, for sure. And I think I think it's incredible that. I mean, you're back, dude, 12 years ago, or what was it? Would it be 12? No, 11 years ago that you started the podcast. I mean, it's like, bro, that's such early days. Like, no one knows about podcasts at that point. Like, it's so small.
And I think that's definitely why I thought about it small, too. Exactly. It's because I felt like it was like such a tight-knit group. Like, hey, do you know what podcasts are? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It was like, there wasn't that many people that knew what we were doing. I had to, like, show a lot of folks and kind of just wait for, that to change. And now, now when we do like these Jack's podcast meetups and I get to meet like new or aspiring podcasters, it's like, man, you are, I had to wait for the industry to kind of like catch up or advance and get to this point. Like you're in a good spot because the barrier to entry is kind of low, and you got a leg up for sure. I had to go find these listeners.
Do you think that it's more difficult to enter the podcast industry when you entered it, or right now? I guess not barrier to entry, because that would. Obviously right now, but do you think that it is more challenging to grow a bigger show entering the industry now versus whenever you started?
Man, I think they both have like their perks and down. I think right now it's like oversaturated, right? So it's like it's almost like a joke now. Like everyone's got a podcast, right? Everyone's got a podcast. Your cousin's got a podcast. Everyone thinks they've got something to say. So right now it's like oversaturated. How do you stand out from a sea of millions? And I think that's when you start seeing shows that just take, the low-hanging fruit, or, they've got to like go viral or something. So it could be challenging now, even though it's easier to get into podcasting. You can record a podcast from your phone and upload it, everywhere pretty easy. But it's how do you get in front of, how do you stand out? And then if you look, when I first started, it's like, the barrier entry was extremely hard. I definitely didn't have any money for any good equipment. And the good equipment was like just kind of seen for music production. So it was really expensive. It wasn't like no cheap podcast specific mics or, a little mix, things that built for podcasters. It was all like, considered just general music equipment, recording equipment.
Like stuff for full concerts.
Yeah. And there was like no bus route for you to throw an episode on and put it on Apple and Spotify. Before, damn, I sound so old now. I'm like, before, back in my day, like I had to write, I had to host it on a website, and I had to like update a RSS. It was like so complicated. It was a lot of steps. But if I had a little bit of marketing savviness to me, and, I maybe kind of took it a little more serious, I think I really could have established, us being like maybe one of the earliest and most dominant comic podcasts. But I didn't see it that way. I didn't think like larger national scale. It was just like a small thing that it was really hard to do. So, I didn't take it serious. It was like, all right, well, if I can get to it this week in between classes or the bars, I'll do it. But, but now it's like, no, I got to. This is something I take real serious. But I think, and one more caveat to all of that, regardless if you started back then or now, I think it boils down to your goals. Like, what does success mean to you in podcasting? And that's something that you've got to define yourself. So that could be something as small as like, I just want to get, my message out there, or I'm trying to get, 10,000 downloads every episode, or I'm trying to get these brand deals and make money off it. There's such a wide array of goals that you can have in podcasting. And depending on which one means the most to you, that's going to drive like your priorities and how you tackle things, and how you move in podcasting. It really comes down to, what does success look like for you? Why are you going to spend all this time and money and investment into doing this thing? Like, what do you hope to get out of it? And it doesn't have to be money or downloads. It could be something therapeutic that you do. You're like, hey, I enjoy this. I like sitting with my friends. I don't care who listens. More power to you. You might have an easier life doing this podcasting thing. But when you start trying to treat it like a business or something professional, like, it's going to take some time and money, and you want to, save as much of that as you can by defining what am I trying to get out of it?
1,000%, bro. Amen to that.
That was good. That was.
Can I get an air horn on that, please?
Yeah, 100%. All day. Dude, what's crazy is like, I mean, he finds a way to formulate the words of like all the struggles that go into like being a podcaster, bro. Because it's like just the little thing. Like I always think about that as well. Like the question I just asked you, where is it? Would it be easier back in the day, or versus right now? But it's like there wasn't like Anchor or Buzzsprout or any of these like places where you can just upload your podcast and it goes to all these different listening platforms every week. Like you had to go on there and publish.
You had to do some
platforms. And,
you had to do some technical. At least the route I took. I don't know if that's true for everyone that started that early, but the route I took was very technical. It was like, and I had a web guy that was like he had a family. He was just doing this on the side, so it wasn't his priority, and it was difficult trying to align schedules with him. And if I fucked up the website, if I fucked up the website, there would be no podcast anywhere. So I'd have to work with him. It was a lot of technical loopholes. Versus now, it's like it's not that hard to build a Buzzsprout profile and upload your episode, and then you don't have to worry. Before I had to all right, is it on Apple? And there was a time where it was only on Apple, and Spotify didn't have Yeah, there was oh my God. I'm old as fuck.
Yeah, you're getting old, man.
I'm so old. I remember a time when Spotify didn't have podcasts, Like there was no directory for it.
That's insane, bro.
But yeah, man,
I got a question for both of you.
Ooh. Damn, there's something you said. Go ahead.
Well, if it comes up after this question. I want you to answer first. What do you want out of this podcast?
Oh. I feel like I'm watching I feel like I'm in a therapy session right now. And the psychiatrist is like, all right, now face each other.
Like you spent over 50 hours this week editing this podcast.
What do you want out of this?
From this?
What's your main goal?
Okay. Damn, that's such a deep question. I think honestly, it's so funny because it changes. Like in the beginning, what you want from it is like so different from what you want. Like, I mean, it always changes. I think right now, all I want is just to. In the early days, it was to be doing this full time. Mm-hmm. But I think now, like my goal for this podcast is just to literally just bring like honest conversations and give out free game to listeners, bro. Yeah. Like it sounds corny, but like the amount of like people when people come up to us in the street or when people like message us on Instagram, whatever, and they're like, yo, that last episode like was actually really helpful for me. Like I'm an illustrator. I'm like, trying to get into the UFC or whatever it is, bro. Yeah. And it's like some people just hit me up and they're like, yo, that was the best like hour-long podcast I've listened to this week or something like that.
And then on 4th of July when we're just going down the road and you got people screaming OGs because we're just going down. I love that. I love when we get noticed.
100%, bro.
It just makes you feel like you're doing something.
Honestly, like I heard this quote a while back and I think I posted it as an Instagram caption a while back too. It's, I used to dream of being at the table and now I'm bringing something to it. So it's like some of these guys like Seti Hendricks for an example, or even some of these like Trey Waters or any of these big brands or whatever it is, bro. It's like these guys would never there would have never been an opportunity. Friggin' Badr. It's like I would have never met Badr. This podcast, this conversation would have never happened. Probably would have never even met him my whole life, bro. We live in the same city without this podcast. So it's like connections like that are really like what I want to keep getting out of this podcast. Like I'm getting the full extent of this podcast, I feel like right now, and I just want to keep going harder so that this just continues to happen down the road. And if it could be my full-time job one day, like don't get me wrong, bro, I'm taking that in a heartbeat.
Yes, sir.
Because that just means that this podcast and these episodes are going to get that much better. You know what I mean?
I think all podcasters would be lying to you if they said that their goal wasn't to do this full-time. Because I mean, what's better than just hopping on the mics and talking about, whether it be with your friends or a subject you're passionate about, what is better than that? At least to me, that is like, yeah, that'd be a great full-time job.
I love a good conversation.
1,000%, bro. Yeah. 1,000%. Like, there's a lot of conversations where me and, like, episodes on this pod where, afterwards we finish it up and we hit, we turn off the mics or whatever and we're on and I'm like, dude, that conversation, like, I could have kept going for another 3 hours.
I swear. It's like, I love having the new conversation every day. It's, like, so refreshing meeting somebody that you never thought you would have ever met. Like, there's no chance, like, in regular life, you would run and cross paths with somebody.
And you'll never know, like, when a guest will come in and you guys actually have a lot of things in common and they actually teach you something new, or like you learn something that's like really helpful for you and your grind or whatever it is. And we always try to share free game with like the people, the audience that are listening as well. But I mean, the audience never get to see what happens off the mics, bro. Like the guests, like you were here for like almost half an hour before we started this. Most of the time, some of our guests will stay. They want to play Madden. They'll do some shit. It's like, bro, there's times you had guests like, I'm like, bro, did you bring a sleeping bag? You know what I'm saying?
I know
it's like, we're going to get dinner after this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, bro, some of those connections, man, it's just like without this podcast, like none of that's happening,
Yeah.
What do you want out of yours?
I think right now my focus has been on trying to like grow a business, but also trying to just establish myself as like a professional. Like I know I'm a professional. Like I do this thing very seriously. I've gotten paid like gigs to host and moderate, but I want to like definitely just build on the brand that I've made. But and I also like to be like I guess I won't say notoriety, but also to be like respected by my peers and people that I look up to in this space. You know, I want it to be known like, hey, I've done this. I'm here. I know a thing or two. But also opportunities too. Like I mentioned last weekend, I got to go to New York Comic Con. I got to do a panel. It was my first time in New York Comic Con. And then on top of it, I got to like do a panel with like some fellow comic book podcasters that I really respect. Like that opportunity wouldn't have come unless I had like this vehicle, like this thing of mine. So lately it's been opportunities and the ability to like get content to share with like, you know, with my audience, my listeners, the fans that have like stuck through it. And, you know, I want to bring them like fresh perspectives. You know, I want to be the vehicle for them to, you might not ever be able to go to New York Comic Con. I'm going to go ahead and share that experience with you. You know, I'm going to go on your behalf. I'm going to represent for the Short Box and, you know, do these cool things and bring that back to like, you know, to the people.
Mm-hmm. I love that, bro.
Yeah.
That's good.
And with that, I feel like we're trying to do that same kind of concept with like OG sessions on the road, bro. And it's like we get inspired but when we see like guys like yourself where you've done all these like live shows and stuff like that. And like, I mean, a lot of the things you've done with your podcast where it's like, I mean, we dream about doing some of this shit, man. And it's like, I feel like you should kind of have that credit. I don't know why some peers wouldn't already kind of give you that credit. But I guess it could always like, you know, you can always expand your
well, I guess I'm thinking now is like just bigger than just like comic podcast because like, you know, put the comics aside, it's still a lot of work to make a show, right? Like it's like the way I treat interviews, I'm very serious. I do a lot of research, the notes, the production, you know, like I do this with a team. It's not just me for the record. It's like me and my team, right? Like I've had, you know, through the podcast, my co-hosts have become like some of my closest friends, like they're family. So, you know, like I'm not just a comic book podcaster. It's like, no, I professionally podcast. I know how to do this. I've started, like, I've given back to the community. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to just elevate just like podcasting as a medium and really put it on the map and in the sense of like Jax, which I feel like has such a strong and an awesome podcast community. And that was one thing, like a big takeaway I had going to Denver for the big podcast movement was just thinking about all the people I've met here, like yourself, a lot of the other people in the Jax Podcasters group, and just try to like build up the industry here. So I think I'm really trying to pivot from just being like, oh, he's the host of this comic book podcast to more like, oh, wow, he's like a spokesperson and a champion for podcasting and getting that, you know, making the barrier of entry even easier and helping people and, you know, trying to build a community and, you know, get the industry taken serious. I think that's what I'm trying to do. Overall.
Yeah, I think you're doing that very well.
I appreciate it.
In a minute, I want to get into talking about the JPU, Jax Podcasters Unite, and everything like that, bro. I mean, I'm obviously part of that club. That is just it is such a, like, that is what I look forward to whenever, it's, you know, because you do it quarterly, right?
Yeah, once a quarter.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that in a minute, but I got a few more questions about, like, obviously you mentioned you're a professional podcaster. I saw a statistic not that long ago, and it was 98%, I believe, of podcasts don't make it past episode 20.
Oh, yeah. That always blows my mind.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, because they realize, like, wow, this is very thankless work. They realize, oh, this is pretty difficult, you know? And I think it's, you start seeing, when you don't see, you know, a bunch of listeners, you start really kind of questioning, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this just for myself? And I think when people realize, like, I guess I could be using this time for something else, or it doesn't quite hit, or it's not a get-rich, you know, scheme, or not scheme, but I think in recent years, when people have seen, like, the Joe Rogan, the Joe Budden podcast, and you know, Caller Daddy deals, and they see all this money attached, I think in the last couple of years, and maybe not so much now, but especially when, like, the pandemic was going on, lockdown, we were seeing like podcasts really like pop off and live shows everywhere. I think a lot of people felt like, oh, there's money in here. Like, it's got to be easy to do. Let me just, these guys are just talking behind a mic. I can do that. Me and my friends are funny. Yeah, we can make millions off it. And then they realize, like, no, this just, that's like the very rare, like top 1% of podcasts are doing this full time and making that type of money. This is very difficult. You know, this is very time consuming, especially if you want it to be good. Like I said, if you want your podcast to be good, to feel like a show, it's going to take some work, like consistent work. Consistency is, it's a lot harder than it sounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, consistency requires some work. So I think when people like just start realizing, like, oh man, I think a lot of folks hit that fork in the road where it's like, do I want to use the time for something else, family, friends, just, having fun? Or do I want to like stay dedicated to something that might not ever pop off, right? That is thankless. I don't know how many people are listening. I'm not seeing, I'm not hearing from folks. You start feeling like, am I just talking in an empty void? And that can be like demoralizing at times. And I don't blame anyone that's like, this ain't for me. So I think that's like some of the big reasons. I think the reality of podcasting and what it takes to like build a show and build an audience, it takes years,
Yeah, and you speak on the expectation part too. Like, I think what a lot of people don't understand is a lot of people are famous before they've started their podcast. So that plays a huge role in it too. Like you see like Joe Rogan, Joe Budden, like some of these guys like that you mentioned, it's like, they already had millions of people. Like they could promote, a freaking glass of water and you're going to go buy it because it's them. And
the most Z-list, guests that either one of those podcasts would have, if you call them Z-list, would be like difficult as hell for us to get. Like just the average Joe, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. That'd be a big deal for us. Mm-hmm. But to them, to like these guys, hey, that's in their Rolodex. They know their publicist knows their publicist. They're in the industry. So they've already got a leg up. They're famous already. You know what I'm saying?
And I think the biggest piece of advice would be never compare your podcast to somebody else's, bro.
Hell no.
You cannot do that in this game. It's dangerous, bro.
I know podcasters or people that have podcasts where their numbers are insanely good, like just strong numbers. And, it's the most like niche topic. And you're like, wow, like, yeah, I guess it makes sense that you're killing it because you're the only one in the space. They're killing it. But they're not making any brand money. They're not doing sponsorships. They're not doing ads. On the other hand, I know podcasts that like aren't performing nearly as strong, but they've positioned themselves, they've marketed themselves, like that sense of perception, and they've got deals. They're a little more marketable. They've got like that business mindset. To me, podcasting is just a vehicle to tell your story or tell someone else's story. Like, it requires a lot of other work to like make money off of it. And that's something with like the short box is I've always like seeked out opportunities. I don't think like money has ever been like the forefront because I just know in comic books, I've talked to so many writers and artists and I know they're not millionaires. So I know the industry isn't like lucrative like that. But I'm always like, well, maybe I can go to this convention and meet, a hero or an idol of mine or someone I really like or, someone that I know the fans and listeners would appreciate. And, there goes a trip to New York. There goes, a trip to San Diego Comic Con. And, like these experiences that I want to go do, but I also don't want to pay. And maybe there's a way for me to like, do that through the podcast.
For sure. 100%, bro. What do you think is,
AKA free shit is my priority.
Nice.
True, honestly. What do you think is the best way to make money from a podcast?
Seeking out sponsorships on your own. I've had the same sponsor, Gotham City Limit, best comic shop here in Jacksonville, Florida, right? Premier comic shop in Jax. And I don't even say that, obviously, you hear from me is like, you biased motherfucker. But they just won 2 awards. They won an award for best specialty shop in Florida and then a Jacksonville specific one. Like, they're a great comic shop, and they've been a sponsor for us for the last, 4 or 5 years. And that's because I've built that relationship. Before I even asked him for money, big shout out to Ben Kingsbury, he already knew about the podcast. I focused more so on the content and community building because I wasn't pressed for money. I work a full-time job, and I think that's a benefit is that I didn't have to. This wasn't my full-time thing. I wasn't like starving for money, so I could just focus on making a good show and building a community. And by the time I was like ready, where I was like, okay, maybe I should seek out a sponsorship. I've been doing this for a long time. Equipment's getting expensive, like podcast bills is getting expensive. These are things I don't really want to pay for on top of just being alive. So
I sounded just being so fast, though, bro.
Yeah,
like, that's the thing. He's
like, damn, yes.
No, he's like correct, bro.
Yeah, I could have just said so adult, being adult, but by the time I got to, and I was shopping at Ben's at the shop, I stop in on my lunch break, got to know him, and eventually, he knew I did podcasting, but he had people coming up to him asking him, hey, do you know about this short box, man? If you don't, you should know. And he's like, actually, he chops here. By the time I approached him one day, I was like, hey, how about we do something together? I'll do an ad for you or an ad read. And it's been beautiful since. And that is how I've approached all my sponsorships is like going directly to them, like having that connection, letting them see a face, and building that rapport right there. Like negotiating my own deals. And really, I think also if you're seeking sponsorships, if it's a brand or company that you can almost bank that they might not know anything about podcasting or downloads or things like that. Sometimes you got to do a little hand holding because to your point, the expectation is that a brand or company is partnering. They want a Joe Rogan. They want to see like millions of downloads and, have viral crazy things pop off that they can be attached to. And that's not the reality. And sometimes you've got to explain that to a brand or company that like, hey, here's how it really works. And here's how I can help you. And being fully honest and realistic, like here's my numbers. But, for us, it made sense for Ben because it's like we're the home team, and we're going to talk. We're talking about comics. He sells comics. You know what I'm saying? So it's not. It makes so much sense. And I shopped there, so there was like some honesty to it as well. So it just made sense. Even like other brands that I've worked with too, it just had to make sense. I had to be using their product or whatever it is, or it just had to make sense, period. And it would be nice if I got to know the person,
right?
Like someone that I could call or chat about things with. And I've been pretty fortunate going the face-to-face route. Now, granted, you're going to get a lot of no's going that face-to-face route, and it takes like some time, but I think it's much more rewarding. And I think you get, instead of like fly-by-night deals or like, we'll, for every, use our discount code and you get a cut of that. It's like, nah, I get to kind of build the deal that I want. If I want cash, then I just ask for cash. If I want, something else, then, we figure it out. Maybe a promo swap or whatever. I think having control and being the person that makes these deals and seeks out these companies makes sense. And I would also advise looking in your own backyard too. Even if it wasn't Ben at Gotham, I would still go seek out a local comic shop, because and even if it's not comic books, if like, let's say you talk about, I don't know, dogs, like think about like the companies in your backyard that deal with your subject matter that you can go link up with, like to build that hometown kind of presence and, just work with someone in your backyard, I think says a lot.
Yeah. Keep it local.
Totally agree, bro. Because you always want to help local business, obviously.
Yeah, true.
Because when you start like expanding out national, now you are competing with like others, and sometimes it's just better to like look in your backyard and see how you can help someone, like someone local as well. Like it's a good trade off of me and like Ben. I'm helping him like get customers and introduce people to like what he does, and he gets introduced to like our listeners, and he's got an online store too. So even if someone listening in whatever New York is like, well, I can't shop there. Well, technically you can. So, it just made sense. I always say think local but national at the same time. If you can merge those two, I think you're in a good place.
Have you ever had anybody reach out to you for sponsorships, or is it always you like seeking?
No, I've definitely had been like courted with like sponsorship deals, but sometimes they're just not the right fit. And then other times it's like the usual run of the mill, like, $5 to have our ad play or do an ad read. And I just don't got time for that. Cause I do like to put the listener experience at the forefront. I don't want my show to look like a walking billboard, or I guess an audio billboard, like
bro.
If I'm going to have an ad or a sponsorship on there, it's got to make sense. It's got to be something that like, I believe in.
And a lot to work for the brand as much as you want it to work for you. Like you want them to also get a benefit out of it, so they keep continuing to work with you. And if you can tell, like, yeah, my audience, your audience better than anybody. If you know that they're not going to fuck with this product, or
for sure,
it's just not like going to be the right fit. I mean, it's not the right fit. Plain and simple. I agree.
Yeah, and I think it all comes back to like understanding your goal. Like, what does success look like to you in podcasting? So if it is like to make money, then maybe you're a little more lax on what sponsorships and deals that you take. If it's about opportunities or non-monetary gain, then you're going to move a little different. I think I've always tried to hit a balance of like, I want to make money so I can cover some of these bills where I'm not paying out of pocket to run this podcast. And then I also want opportunities. And I think I've been fortunate where I can dabble in both. So it's like I got the sponsorship deals, we got the Patreon, and then we do like other things too. We sell merch and all of that stuff. And then the opportunities are like my comic conventions, being able to like host interviews and panels. Like to go back to like that kind of local aspect, I've recently started doing things with like the public library. They do like these big book fests. Like they did one a couple months ago where Joe Hill was there. And if you're not familiar, Joe Hill is like a very well acclaimed and successful horror author, and he also writes comics. So the perception and the reputation I have, here in town is like, well, yeah, we need someone to host this interview with him, this little intimate interview that we're hosting. Yeah, let's go to the guy that has a comic book podcast in our own backyard. You know what I'm saying? Like letting your city, your town, whatever it is, be known that, hey, I do this. That's going to come back.
Yeah.
Oh, 1,000%, bro. I think you got to get your community, behind you before you try to go get the world behind you.
One of my
bro.
favorite, I'm going to butcher this saying, but it is one of my favorite Pimp C quotes. Yeah, I think he goes, yeah, you got to make your town rock before you before you make the city rock. If you can make your town rock, then you can make a city rock. If you make the city rock, then you make a state rock. You know what I'm saying? Like
1,000%.
Focus on defining and honing your skills in like a small bubble, and then start thinking big. Because at the very least, you've got your hometown holding you down.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, bro. That's super dope. Let's jump into JPU.
Hell yeah,
Dude,
JPU.
I'm excited about this shit, man. So, Jack's Podcasters United, man. One of my favorite things, that we get to do. I think it's quarterly, like you said, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, it seems like I wish you would do it more often, but I see why you don't do it more often.
You know how often we get that? Yeah.
Oh, I bet, bro. Tell me a little bit about it, man, for the listeners.
Okay, so the Jack's Podcasters United group is essentially, the goal is to be the home in Northeast Florida for all podcasters, right? So we're part networking group. We're all community. Man, my math is all over the place. But look, we're a networking group. We're a community, and we're a collective that not only celebrate podcasting, we celebrate the podcasters here in Northeast Florida. We host, our main thing is like the networking events, which we host quarterly. It's completely free. We always find like a local, bar, a local venue, someplace local, that we can host these meetups, and we invite audio creators, podcasters. We had broadcasters come out to these networking events, and we just like we network, right? We mingle, we talk about the industry, we share things that are frustrating us. Maybe like you need help with editing. Well, guess what? We know this guy that does a lot of editing. Or I need intro music. Oh, good. Let me introduce you to David. He makes music, and he's got his own podcast. So it's really like sharing the resources and elevating specifically the podcast industry here in Northeast Florida. So like trying to bring, people and companies together and brands together, and, also share knowledge too. We do a lot of educational sessions where we invite successful and professional podcasters come to talk and share tips and answer questions. And we've been doing it since 2018. So it was founded by myself and my now fiance, Blythe Brumleve, who's been podcasting just as long as me as well. And so and Ryan Paul Thompson, Ryan is like our redheaded stepchild. Like in most political families, there's always that one child that's like, the troublemaker, the drunk, that they're like, look, you get the trust fund, but you cannot be in the photos. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just say it in the newspaper. Damn. So Ryan is, I joke, but Ryan is like, that's what me and Blythe treat Ryan as. But Ryan was pivotal in the first JPU meetup. But in 2018, we had this idea, and especially I was kind of like angsty about it. I was like, man, it's 2018. I'm starting to meet other podcasters like slowly in the city. I had started dating Blythe, and then I started meeting other podcasters, and I was attending other networking events where it was like, Artist of Jack's meetup, or, just like young business entrepreneur meetup. And I was like, man, I could do this. Just, bring people together, just, hey, meet us up at the bar at 6:00 if you're a, podcaster. So I worked with Brian and Ryan, and we hosted our first one in April of 2018. It is at the Space 42. It was a warehouse gallery that doesn't exist anymore. Big shout outs to Michelle for believing us in that first one. But the space was cool. It was like a warehouse gallery that you had a bunch of art exhibits. They actually had a bunch of art still up. And I just put the word out through Facebook, and, Blythe shared it, and Ryan pushed it. And we had like 50 people show up to that first one. I bought a bunch of pizza and, stuff from Publix, and like 50, 60 people. Yeah, about 50, 60 people showed up. And it was just so amazing, for the first one. And I'm meeting, everyone was new. Like it was so many new people that was like, you're a it was like we were all crawling out of the dark, like, you're a podcaster? You're a podcaster too? Oh my God. I found my people.
Yeah.
So we decided to just continue doing that. And we wanted to do the quarterly route because we had attended, there was a bunch of networking events that were monthly that, if we're being honest, like, we just kind of fell off from. We felt like monthly was too much. Like, if it's monthly, it starts feeling like, oh, I could just skip that. I'll just catch it next month. It doesn't feel like a priority. There isn't a sense of urgency. And not only that, but we're just also very busy people as well. So it just worked out for our schedule. Now, do I hear after every single meetup, man, you got to do these more often? Why can't these be monthly? I hear it all the time, but we're really kind of honed in on doing it quarterly just because it feels like an event. We want people to be like, oh, we got to go. We don't want to miss it and wait a couple months. But we're trying to do more like bigger events because for the last, if my math is right, like past 5 years, it has been like these quarterly meetups where one meetup will be like a networky one at a bar, mingle on your own. We covered some of the drinks and then we'll do educational. And it's been like that way for the last 5 years. And after going to that big Denver podcast conference, I don't know, it just kind of re-energized what we want to do with the JPU and, the potential that's here. I'm telling you, the amount of talent in podcasting and people that have started companies and entrepreneurs that are based in Jacksonville is astonishing. Like, we took like a group photo at the Denver Podcaster Meetup, or Denver Podcast Conference, podcast movement. And it was like, 10, 12 of us. And, they were like, this isn't everyone. So-and-so is downstairs. Oh, the other one flies in tomorrow. And it was really inspiring because me and Blythe went to Podcast Movement with the goal of like, let's go ahead and share the story of the JPU. Actually, we did a talk. It was called the How to Build a Community in Your Backyard, the Story of the Jax Podcasters United. So we went there to do that talk, but also like, okay, let's see if we can't like get this in front of like, sponsors and corporate people and, see if anyone would be interested in hosting an event or helping us grow this thing and all this stuff. And what we got left out of it was like, there's no one else doing something like this, like a podcast community to this scale. There is, we actually met someone in Colorado that does Colorado podcaster meetups, but he does the whole state, and he's like, bro, some days I'm in Boulder, other days I'm, it's like, damn. So it was pretty impressive, and they do other podcaster meetups, but as far as like a dedicated community based out of like a city and all that, we were really unique, and like we just left like even more blessed. Like, man, this is so cool that this community, this group that we built, and, they're all here, here in Northeast Florida. Some aren't all from Jax. We've had people driving from Tampa and Orlando. But, there's a sense of, like, community, regardless of where you're from and you show up to these events.
100%, bro. And I'll tell you one thing. I take a lot of things from these events. Like, I've been to 3 so far, maybe 4 so far, actually. But not only did I meet you, who is now a current OG Sessions guest on the podcast, but Bobby Brown Jr.
Oh, hell yeah. The episode was so good. Bobby is so cool, man.
Yeah, he's a great dude, man. Shout out to him. And but, yeah, I mean, besides that, though, there's been issues I've ran into with editing and with just like marketing and things like that where I'm like, damn, I thought this would work, but it didn't work or whatever it is. And just after talking to some other people, they're like, oh, I'm struggling with that too. Or, oh, I know the solution to that problem or whatever it is. It's like, it's crazy, bro, how many people in the city are kind of in the same position as you. Like, you don't realize where, I'm not saying as you, but I'm saying just in general, like you get there and you're speaking to, there's at least like 20, maybe 30 other podcasters that are at these meetups. And it's like, I'm talking to them and I'm like, we're kind of sitting in the same boat, or it's like, I've got a solution to their problem or they know how to. So, man, just hats off to you, bro. The fact that you correlate those and get them going, it's just crazy.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Our main ethos has always been collaboration over competition, community and collaboration over competition. Like, we're not trying to compete with one another. The industry is big, and that is the other big takeaway that I took out of the Denver meetup was, oh wow, okay, there's a big enough pie for everyone. Like it'll take some work to get in and get certain companies to believe in you, and obviously to get over that hurdle of like everyone wants you to have millions of downloads, but there is definitely enough in the industry to go around to share. And that is why, like, we've always wanted the JPU to feel welcoming, and that we see you where you're at, and maybe like these two are on the same level, but someone here is where you're at, or they've been where you're at, and it's really cool to think back about all the different type of people I've met, and from professional retired broadcasters that are trying to enter the podcast space to folks that have like started companies, or people that like use podcasting to like get clients for their business. Like I said, it is a wonderful medium that is adaptable to so many ways. Podcasting is, whether you're someone that like has a story to share. We've all heard the comedy podcast, interview podcasts, like, if you have a business, like to start a podcast and bring clients on, you know what I'm saying? It really depends on, what you want to do. Like, what does success look like to you? How can you use the vehicle of conversation and talking and the voice to like reach your goals? That's how I've always viewed it.
Yeah, I love it, bro. And, what would be your piece of advice for some of these people that are in other cities? Because we have so many listeners that are outside of Jacksonville. First things first, if you are inside Jacksonville and you have a podcast, I know there's been multiple that I've already invited to the JPU thing.
Thank you.
But definitely come check these out, man. There's so many things you can pull away from it, and just so many great things that this podcast alone has pulled away from it. But what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody that's in a different city, maybe somewhere that's kind of similar to Jacksonville, small market city or whatever, where
And they're trying to build like a community?
Yeah.
I'd say, what was that saying? Build it and they will come. I had no idea that we would be like really thinking business savvy and, starting, a business through this and trying to like really grow this thing and being this dedicated and, passionate about the podcast industry in Jax. Like really, but starting out, it was just a means of like, hey, I just want to meet other people doing this. And, I'm going to enough of these other networking events. Let me just do one about podcasting. So I'd say just build it, like put the word out. And maybe you won't get 40, 50 people to show up. But that's kind of like sometimes how it goes for us. We have like, some days, some events, it's like more, some events are less. But regardless, you just got to get it started. And it doesn't have to be crazy intricate or, a giant production. I feel pretty confident that we do a good job of keeping it like, worthwhile and, some level of production, but it's also very like easygoing and welcoming. And I think if you're just starting out, just put the call out, put the word out. Like, hey, podcast, whatever, XYZ podcaster meetup, place, time, have a fly. I definitely think having a poster or some sort of imagery is key. And then also photography. I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. Nothing is better than being able to show, the events. And that is something I'm very always particular about, is hiring a photographer to show the community. Like, we could talk about community all day, but nothing beats being able to show you the faces of the people that make up the JPU. So I would definitely say, like, if you're starting out, like, put the word out, can really think about the marketing. It doesn't got to be crazy, but also like, really focus on spotlighting the community. And I just happen to do that through, photography and having like nice pictures to show sponsors and, like other venues. Like when you can show a venue like, hey, I'm not just another dude asking to use your space, bring all my, noisy friends to your space. Like, we're trying to build something. And I think when you've got photographic proof, that helps out.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree, bro. I think a lot of people don't want to take the extra mile with a photographer, no matter what it is. It just costs money, and it's just, they're like, oh, I could have my friend do it or something. But nothing beats like a professional getting in there and like taking the shots of people laughing and having a good time, as opposed to just like, panoramic of the whole room or things like that, you know? So I definitely love that aspect of the meetups. I think that it's very obvious that when you go to these meetups, you put a lot of preparation into them. I get a ton of goodies from them sometimes, bro. It's like, it's cool, everybody always makes a comment about, one time we got a door hanger that says
from BuzzFeed. Yeah, like recording in progress or something like that.
Yeah, recording. And I was like, yeah, this is super dope. And every person that comes through, they always make a comment like, this is so cool. But yeah, man, shout out to you. Shout out to everything you've done. Shout out to you for coming on the show, bro.
No, this has been a long time in the make. Like I said, I do respect how quickly you've like hit the ground running with this. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that you're already, doing the videos, you're doing the clips. Those are things that if I had done early on, then I think I would be in a much bigger place. But like I said, I had to wait for like the industry to catch up and like, like for reels and things to be YouTube to also blow up. YouTube has been like an interesting thing too, because when people think podcasting now, it's like, oh, are you on YouTube? Like, where's the video? You know what I'm saying? Like,
for sure.
It's much different now, in my opinion, than prior, where podcasting was strictly like an audio only thing. Now you've got a lot of different variables and elements, and it's maybe not so easy now because if you want it to be official, people expect video, expect YouTube, and as you guys know, that stuff don't come cheap.
Hell no, bro.
It is not cheap.
Hell no, bro. First off, thank you for those kind words, bro. I really appreciate it. Like, we obviously, I've dumped so much fucking time into this podcast. So anytime people are enjoying the content or just, noticing the work that goes in, bro, I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I think I think early on I wasn't thinking a lot about like branding or marketing. Does even like the small thing like the name, like I said, we just jumped in. It was like an opportunity. It was cool. It was like, we strictly did it out of love of just hanging out with our friends, but now, I've put in the time and, I know it could be, not saying I know it could be, it is something much more, and it represents a lot more for people. And it's a staple, I think, in the industry, and I want it to feel professional and whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of mistakes early on that I did, but now, I get to like see podcasters like yourself, and it's like, dang, if I can share that through the JPU or through the short box and save people the headache, and like, because I've done a lot of shit as far as like, marketing and, trying different things. Like in 2018, we started doing like podcast live shows, and I kid you not, I know right now podcast live shows is just a thing, right? You can go on any website, look up your favorite podcast, they're probably going to tour. But around 2017, 2018, we started doing live shows, and it was before I even thought that was something to do. Like, I think I went to the Joe Budden podcast live in Tampa, like a few years after it. And I was like, man, this is so cool that I'm watching my favorite podcast do something that I just started doing. But, I dabbled into like live shows. I can't even tell you the different like print marketing, like, posters, guerrilla kind of like marketing, like stapling posters places, dropping flyers, stickers everywhere. I've done a lot of things to try to get like build a short box and live shows and charity drives and all that. And I've learned so much. I failed a lot. So I feel like I'm in a position to share things like, okay, this is what I've done. Here's how I've succeeded. Here's how you could succeed now with these tools that I didn't have,
Yeah, 100%, bro. Appreciate you sharing all that too, bro, because it's like there's so much free game in this episode that you've already dropped for. It's like if you're a new podcaster, man, just start taking notes, because this game is difficult. This game is hard. You got to be in it for the long haul. One stat I wanted to pull up is you are the longest, you're going to need to correct me on this, but you're like the longest lasting comic book podcast in the industry.
We're one of the longest running comic book podcasts in the industry, is what I say. One of the, because I know there's a few that have been doing it as long or have more episodes, but I'm confident we are one of the longest running, still going, ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Like ongoing, I think being a key word, because there's podcasts, the comic podcasts that I meet that I respect, and I'm like, oh, I've been doing it since this long, and they're like, what? Like what? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
we're definitely one of the longest running ones. Just, ongoing as well, consistently.
Yeah, shout out to you, bro. That's super dope, man. Let's go ahead and plug these people in. Where can they listen to the Shortbox?
Oh, word. All right. So Shortbox Podcast, you can find it anywhere you find podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, all that. But if you just go to theshortboxpodcast.com, that's one of your best bets. And as far as the JPU, the Jax Podcasters United, jaxpodcastersunited.com, we're in the middle of planning our Q4 for this year event. So we're trying to do something in December, and then we're trying to plan like a really elevated event is what I'll say. And I can't really do too many details because it's so early on, but we really want to do the next, event, something that really put Jax on the map in terms of podcast.
Hell yeah, bro. Shout out to everything you guys are doing over there, man. You guys are crushing it. Do you want to go ahead and do Joey's top three before we wrap this thing up?
I thought you forgot.
No,
okay, I was
bro.
sitting here thinking, I was like, damn, is he really going to...
Joey's top three.
I was also expecting like some wild, like, comic book questions too. Like, man, who would win in a fight? You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point.
But I'm glad that you guys kept it like cool.
Well, the thing is, bro,
I'm here.
Like, to be honest, I don't know a shit ton about comic books. I know a lot about podcasting. So like for you to spill all that game and just like, I mean, I've learned so much just in this episode that's going to help me with my podcast. And it's just, I really appreciate you coming through, bro. It's super dope. And I actually have a suggestion for today's Joey's top three.
No.
Okay. You want
Joey's like, you should have told me in
What's your
pre-show.
suggestion?
Okay.
If you tell me top three comics, I'm going to be pissed off.
Hell no.
Okay,
because I would
it?
probably just choose superhero characters.
Right.
I'm going to go, I was thinking top three Halloween candies.
Fuck you. That I swear on
that's tough.
everything I love and own, that's what I was going to ask.
No way.
Yeah. Good
Damn,
shit.
that's tough.
We are connected.
We need the rings that they have, so it's like they ching. It's so funny. So top three.
Yeah, top three Halloween candies since Nick wants to
Oh my
take over.
god! Wait,
segment.
that's on me to start it?
So, so what it is
man.
basically, Joey chooses every single week. He chooses a category for us to each give our top three. And
Okay,
he used
okay.
to just do it randomly every episode for some odd reason, and so then we just made it a segment. So now every week, Joey's top three gets an opportunity to say, "What is your top three at
Okay,
whatever the
Whatever
category
I
is?"
think of.
Man, okay. Whew, spitballing here. Okay, off the rip, peanut M&Ms all day. I feel like they reign supreme. All right,
Sleeper,
All right.
sleeper.
I don't even feel like that's well, maybe not in my household. It is definitely not a sleeper. It is like a mandatory. All right, peanut M&Ms.
They're in the jar all the time.
I'm a sucker for Skittles, man. I know Skittles is just candy coated sugar, right? It is colored sugar cubes or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for some Skittles. My Skittle addiction is so bad, I gotta hide Skittles sometimes. Actually, you know what? I think I seen a news story that said that in one certain state, might be California. I feel like this is a California thing to do. Like they banned Skittles because of the food coloring or something.
The yellow
in them.
5
Yeah.
or something like
Something
that.
like that. And I was like, never moving to California. You know what I'm saying? Like imagine going to a gas station, and you're just in the mood for some wild berry Skittles, which are the best ones.
So fuck the health concerns.
Yeah, it's like, nah, I know what they are. All right. You know what I'm saying? Don't do me no favors.
What about the sour ones? You like the sour ones?
Oh, yeah. I do, but not as good as the wild berry. The purple
I'm
pack.
all original, bro. I don't fuck with the wild berries, honestly. I'm like original, dog. And what's your top three? Or
All
what's
right.
number three?
And number three might be might get some folks going to shut this shut this video off right now because I know how people feel about coconut, but I love me some almond joys.
Ooh.
Love me some almond joys, and I might be saying
We
them
should
wrong
have turned
too.
it off. Y'all should-
Bad segment.
I know it is a personal.
You can change it right now if
No,
you
no, no,
want.
no. I'm standing
He's
strong.
riding with
Because
it.
when I get like them when I was a kid, I used to get like them 1-packs, in like the candy bag. Man, I felt like a king. Just a mound of like that blue and white packaging, and I still love me. I don't know. I'm a sucker for coconut and chocolate, so like almond joys and mounds and all that.
Yeah. I'm going to go next.
right,
My
take
number one, probably Snickers. Love me some Snickers. Number two, I'm going to have to agree with Skittles.
Come on.
Because, damn.
That's strong.
Man of culture.
That's strong.
And then number three, I'm going to piss you off and say Reese's.
That's not bad. Damn.
I'm just happy it's on your list. I don't care. I mean, wherever it's got to fit in, it's got to fit in, man. Honestly,
I guess I could have, if I wanted to like play it safe, I would have removed almond joy and just said the
This
Reese's
isn't a play it
Pieces.
safe podcast.
But nah, I'm
This
sticking
ain't a
strong.
play it safe
That's a good
podcast.
one though.
And I'm surprised Joey went that mainstream because there is some candies out there that I feel like.
I'm interested to see what you hear. Or what
So,
you say.
number one, obviously, got to be the GOAT Reese's.
Yeah.
And it can be any kind of Reese's. I don't give a fuck, dog.
Just
It's
chocolate
You're
and
like
peanut
all
butter,
white
bro.
chocolate. I'll take that. All the peanut butter ones.
Dude,
Yeah.
100%, bro.
Oh,
And, personal favorite, you got to go Reese's Big Cup, but that's just me. That's just me.
From the freezer?
Oh, bro. No, if they've got it in the little like
100%.
window of the fucking like beer section or something, dog.
You're buying it every
I'm
time?
buying 3. I'm taking the whole fucking rack, dog. Yeah, and I'll crush some things before I even get home too. That's the thing. I'll eat them right there in the car, man. I like keeping that car clean. I just can't help it. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes I buy like if I know I'm buying like some Reese's, yeah, for sure. I will tear them up in the car. So what I'll do is I'll buy like 3, one for the car, and then I'll put the other 2 in the bag, and I'll put it in the back seat, so I can't like
touch
reach
it,
it.
yeah.
Amen,
Because if it's left to me, if it's in the passenger seat,
You're
all
gonna
3 of
keep
them
eating
are being eaten before I hit the driveway.
And shout out to the Super King 6 Reese's in one package,
Oh
bro.
my gosh.
Them bitches are so
Wait, what?
perfect. Yeah, they got the Super King now, so it's like a super long package, it's like more than the King.
Oh,
and it's got
okay.
6 in there instead of 4, I think. So that thing is crazy, bro. It's so worth it every single bite.
Number two.
Number 2, I'm gonna go Trolley sour gummy worms.
Yes. Yeah.
Just like during Halloween, I know for me, like whenever I look in my bag and there's like someone like, I was able to snag a couple of them trolley gummy worms because they don't come. I mean, you got to get at least like 5, so it's a nice little size bag, bro. I'm always hyped about it. That's just me personally. Let's go 3. I might hop on Snickers with you.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Snickers, that's just a safe play.
You get the
It's a safe
chocolate,
play,
the nuts, the caramel.
Snickers is my go-to candy bar when I haven't eaten lunch yet and I'm like hungry and I'm like I need something a little filling,
It's
but
substantial. Like you get some
great word.
I'll
It is
tell you what,
substantial.
whenever we're on the golf course and the cart lady comes around and we're just like feeling a little something, I'm like,
I had one today.
Come on, give me a
bro.
Snicker.
And
I get a Snickers every time.
You got to, bro. And Snickers is shout out Snickers.
I got to throw in a sleeper.
I got 2 sleepers too.
I got a sleeper. You
Okay,
ready?
here you go.
Runts, but the bananas.
Huh.
I never even had them.
Okay.
Really?
I'll be honest, never
That's
even
a
You
had
know what I'm
'em.
talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're
Them
talking about.
bananas, boy. Oh,
Never had them.
they're good.
You
should
look like
try
a
it out.
giant runt right now.
You really do.
I would say two candies that I've gotten like really into lately, and I think it's just anytime Halloween starts coming around, I can't not believe I'm saying this in this crazy getup. I'm not the biggest costume guy.
No way.
Yeah, right. But
Really?
I get
He had
excited.
this. He didn't even have to buy that.
I'm very good point, Jerry. Very good. Touche. Very good point. Don't believe a thing I said this whole podcast. I'm a liar. But I do get excited for the candy deals. I got a terrible sweet tooth, and I'll go into Publix like, ooh, I can't wait for all of this to be
yeah.
BOGO.
Yeah.
But I've recently gotten into Sour Patch Kids strawberry, which you can't find at every gas station.
Ooh.
I'm a sucker for like some rare candy where you got to be like, oh, you can't get it here. You got to go to the 7-Eleven on this
Yeah.
corner. You're like, oh, that's the only place? So Sour Patch strawberries. And then them peach rings. I don't know what brand
those are
makes them.
good.
Those are
Haribo.
good.
I
think.
forgot about those.
Those
peach
actually,
rings are
that's a
on
good
point.
sleeper. That's a
Yeah.
really good
Yeah.
sleeper.
And
Big
then
fan
one
of
that you hate, fireballs. Those cinnamon fireballs. You know,
Wow, I haven't had one of them in a long time now.
No,
anything cinnamon. Hell no.
Yeah, I'm good on that. I'm good on all that. What I love is my grandmother is from England and stuff, and so like I got so much British descent over there and stuff,
cool.
bro. And so they'll always send over candy or bring someone. They come and they've got this one candy called flying saucers. Ooh boy, them things! I'm telling you, bro.
Yeah, high note.
It's crazy, bro, because they're like these little. I can't even describe it. It's like a little like a puff thing or whatever. It's like it looks like a little miniature flying saucer, like a little UFO, and it's got these like tiny little candies in these like little nerds, bro. And they're so fluffy. Best things ever. If you ever try one, definitely. If you ever see me in the store, you gotta try it.
Ooh, I got a question for y'all. What is who's your favorite like superhero? When you think of like comic books, what names come to mind? And do you have a favorite superhero? And then I want to hear like, what's the nerdiest thing you're into?
Ooh.
You guys are like some cool dudes. I want to know like what is like the other side? What is the nerdy thing that you're a little shy about admitting? Nick,
Well,
you said
I
one.
got
You
one,
said
yeah.
one during our pre-show that I was like, wait, what?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
well,
got a good one.
Want me to
for
go
you.
first?
Yeah, you
So
go,
when
my
I
bad.
was a kid, I used to collect coins, and
Okay.
I used to collect them like crazy, bro. Like my grandfather got me into it, and it was, we'd fill up the books where it was like you'd have every
Oh, that's
year and every version because there's different mints and stuff. So for me, probably my nerdy thing that I used to be into was, coins. But now my current nerdy thing would probably be Madden. I'm a big Madden guy. Like I'll play Madden on, obviously the video game like all the time.
Saying I'm really into Madden is nowhere near as nerdy as saying I'm into coins. Like Madden, you're almost like, all right, cool.
Well, it's like you kind of grow out of the coin thing. You know what I mean? It's like nowadays, if I see a coin, I'm not even checking it. I'm just putting that bitch in my wallet.
but there's a little bit of like the past, like you're like, oh yes, a Wyoming 2015.
It happens. I'm not even gonna lie, it happens.
You ever like pick up a coin, like, that's a real goal right there.
Yeah, right. No, it's funny. I actually, whenever I pick up a penny, I will still check to see if it's if it's any wheat cent, which is basically where it's got the wheat on the back and not the Lincoln Memorial, or if it's a 1909 SVDB. Any coin collector knows that coin is worth like 20 grand, bro. It's a penny worth 20 grand. And so I always look for the 1909 SVDB. That's kind of like but that's only with pennies. Like if it's a dime or something, I couldn't
That is so
not
cool.
give any less of a fuck.
I mean, yeah, this is super nerdy, but it is interesting, like how that is his own world. Like you said, collectors will know X, Y, Z. Like as a kid, it was like, yeah, comic books are super nerdy. But as I got into an adult, it's like, well, a lot of things are really nerdy. Like I meeting Blythe, I really got into like football and getting to meet like other football fans and folks that are into like fantasy football. And that shit's like super nerdy to me. I'm like, wow, you guys are just as nerdy. It's just that this is accepted as cool a little more than comic books. But this is interesting. Like, and I know about the coin world, but obviously not enough. So it's cool, like that perspective of like this whole world. You don't even know about it, man. You don't know about the wheat penny at the
Wheat cent.
yeah, wheat cent. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe? What's the nerdiest thing about you?
The thing I nerd out on is definitely exotic plants.
Wow.
Like house plants. I've well over 150 house plants in my room.
Have you been to his room?
So backstory.
He's like, no, he don't let no one near
trust
the
So he used to have a tiny house around here, and the whole place, it was a tiny jungle, bro. You could barely even walk around. There were so many houseplants, and he I told him, I was like, you gotta start posting this shit on social media, bro. Like, this is really crazy. Like, I guarantee there's nobody else that collects houseplants and lives in a tiny house. Like, those two things don't go together, bro. And what's crazy is he started doing it on TikTok and he fucking blew up, bro.
Damn.
Now he's got brand deals and shit.
Is it specifically exotic houseplants?
I mean, yeah, because I don't want no basic shit. But,
bro, it's crazy though. Like he'll what's it called when you remake them? Like you make them
Propagate.
Propagate.
Oh
them.
yeah, propagate.
Bro, he'll propagate them and like these plants.
I'll turn one plant into 20 real quick.
Damn.
And it's like each one sells it like Ace Hardware for like $150.
Yeah.
How did you get into this?
So my mom, always growing up, she always had like a veggie garden in the back, and she kind of nerded out a lot because we went to Disney World and they had this whole aquaponics thing. They had the fish and the water from the fish flowing through the plants and shit, and the plants were growing. So she did that, always growing veggies growing up, and then once I moved out, I had my own veggie garden, and it went fantastic. Obviously, I grew some big old pumpkins. He was eating all my blueberries. Like,
Bro,
it was
crazy, dog.
And then it got cold and all my plants died. So I'm like, shit, I still want to care for some plants. So I went to Home Depot, bought 3 plants, and then through Instagram, I met this woman, Burr. Shout out Burr. And I got so many fucking plants from her. Like, it just turned into an obsession.
Plants. I had no idea you could like ship a plant.
Wow.
Bro.
It was like every week I had a box of plants on my house.
That is legit.
It was so dope.
That's cool. Wow. That's really cool. I appreciate y'all answering that. Okay, but go back to one of my earlier questions. Who's your favorite superhero?
Mermaid Man.
That was genius. That's perfect.
Come on.
That's perfect.
Layup. Yeah, I just gave you an alley-oop.
No, that is perfect. I think my favorite superhero,
Clark Kent.
I think Batman, honestly. Like, I kind of want to go Batman, but it's DC. I don't like going DC.
No, look, Batman's like one of the greatest superheroes.
Yeah,
ever.
I know. I just don't like going DC. Like, my sister was really big into comic books, and she would like despise me right now if I ever went DC. So I think
So how did the comic book gene skip you? Was it just because of like, no, my sister's in it? That's not cool at all.
there's a lot of reading involved, man.
Oh,
That's the hard part.
That is true. That is true. I used to try to
With the coins, you got like maybe 4 words. You know what I'm saying? On
That's
these
fair.
Coins,
Yeah,
you
yeah. That's a good point. And you're
I don't
actually
even have to
dealing with
read
money.
plants.
Exactly. That's a great point.
You don't ever like read to your plants? I know some people like do like things like
God.
that.
I definitely
Sings to the
do.
plant.
I do talk to them.
He sings to him for
They
sure.
get happy, you know.
When I really got into comic books was like around middle school, and then they had like the 25 book challenge where you had to read like 25 books throughout the year, but you also had to like log these books and write like a little paragraph about them. I liked reading, but I also didn't like forced reading. So I was always finding a loophole, and eventually I found a teacher that was like, I was like, can I just read comic books to count as the books? And she was like, okay, well, every 5 comics would count as a regular book. She almost said it to me as if it was going to deter me. I was like, can I read comic books to count as books? She was like, yeah, comic books are kind of like flimsy. They're not that long. But I mean, if you can read 5, I'll count them as 1. I think she was thinking I didn't read a lot. Boy, what? I finished the 25 book challenge, I remember, like in a week. She was like, okay, going forward, it's got to be at least 10 or something. And I still crushed it. Yeah.
That's crazy, bro. And it's cool that it kind of like sparked your love for comic books, like in the end of the day, you know? I mean, not sparked your love, but it was kind of a cheat code, you know, with doing the comic books.
Well, you know, man, and thinking back about like some early days of podcasting, it just going back to like how everything just aligned for Shortbox. You know, aside from, you know, Walt being on that other podcast and getting the opportunity to record, you know, us working at a comic shop. But it was also, like, if I recall correctly, 2018 was like when the Avengers movie came out. So like the MCU was just like, it was early MCU. It was like, you know, the people were checking for comic books. Like, we would get people coming to the comic shop like, yo, I just left Iron Man, 2. I just seen Iron Man 2. You guys got any Iron Man comics? You know, like, it was cool to see new blood come into the comic shop, both through that kind of image renaissance, but also the movies were popping off. And it was like, oh shit, this isn't that nerdy. You know, this isn't that nerdy anymore. Now when these movies are making billions of dollars, it's like, this isn't really that nerdy anymore. Hell, this isn't even like underground or like niche anymore. It's like mainstream. You know what I'm saying? Everyone knows who Captain America is. Everyone knows who Robert Downey. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you go right now to a young kid and you're like, what is Robert Downey Jr.'s most famous role? They'd probably say Tony Stark, Iron Man, which I wouldn't be mad at, but it just kind of more so speaks to the fact that we were talking comics at the right time, where some of our listeners were also finding out about podcasts, but also getting into comic books, and we were right there. Because we always try to make our show feel like welcoming. We wanted to feel like the conversations we were having at the comic shop. And luckily, like, myself, Drew, Cesar, and Walt, we were kind of multifaceted. Like I love comic books, but I really love music and reading. And Walt was really like big into politics and sports. So it was like we were also approachable. So I think when people heard us, it was like, oh, okay, they're not like a comic book guy from Simpsons or like a neckbeard or what these terrible outdated stereotypes about people who read comics. It was like, oh, these guys are just regular. They just happen to like this like nerdy shit, but I'm also catching movies on the weekend and I want to see what they think about it,
100%, bro. Yeah. And I think one question I asked you behind the scenes was like, do you have any fear with it being like too niche of a podcast category or a genre or whatever? And
I think sometimes you need. I think sometimes you need. I'm sorry. No, I think sometimes you need to just pick a niche, because if not, then you are. If you just do a comedy show, well, now you're dealing. Think of how many just general comedy. I think sometimes finding like just honing in on something helps out in the long run. It really makes you stand out, but it's also challenging because if we're talking consistency, how are you going to talk about this one super hyper niche topic for 2, 4, 5 years, like it gets challenging.
But also, I found out that that's not actually that niche. Like you can talk about movies, you can talk about all this shit.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like it's crazy, bro.
Yeah. So comic books, I kind of treat it like an umbrella, and like we're trying to talk about the culture. So when you think culture, you're thinking the arts, you're thinking like the movies, you're thinking I could do, for the short box we've interviewed some of the best comic creators in the world. Like we've got like some unforgettable interviews. We've got really good. We do comic book reviews. We'll do movie reviews. And then even just thinking about the interviews, I'm not always interviewing just a writer or artist. Like I was telling you, I interviewed like a guy that works at a auction house, and he works in their comic book department, because comic books is also big money now. And when you think about the retail and not retail, but the resale side, and the collecting side, like how much these books are going for, because there's only just throwing a number out there, but there's only 1,000 Batman #1s. And this book came out in, what is it, 1932? Or,
That's
30s,
crazy,
40s?
Dog.
There's only a finite number. And some of these books go into the millions. So we interviewed a guy that worked at an auction house and dealt with specifically of comics. And I just got to nerd out about all the rare, expensive shit he's gotten to see and dabble in, collections that he's had to go to like, other parts of the world to find. I don't know, comic books is, to me, it's not only the best vehicle for storytelling because you get the art aspect, but it is where art and commerce have to like really work together, because these comics are being sold every single week, every single month. They go for resale prices, and there's a whole market dedicated to that. There's some comic content creators who only focus on resale. They're only looking at like, all right, well, here's your top 5 hot books this week. This book rose this much in price. There's so much you could do that encompasses comic books outside of like the print material. But regardless of us covering being multifaceted, I always want to try to elevate the art form, that hey, these aren't just all kids stories. Some of these are like really profound, and some of these have had like live with me and have impacted me and have made changed the way I think, or taught me something new. It's like I said, it's just it's a vehicle to tell a story. And luckily in comic books, it doesn't always have to be superheroes punching bad guys in the face. Some comic books are just like about real people, real scenarios, autobiographical, and all that stuff.
100%, bro. And dude, I really appreciate your time, bro. This was a dope interview, and just kind of something out of me and Joey's lane a little bit.
Yeah.
Something different.
I enjoyed it, though. I feel like I learned.
Yeah, 100%. I
like you, Joey.
It's been a while since I learned.
And it's also great having a fellow podcaster on here, man, that just knows how to just like carry a conversation and also just kind of, say what you're trying to say the right way. Sometimes people come on here and, maybe they're just an entrepreneur or somebody that doesn't do podcasting very often. And so for them, they're kind of wobbly on their feet to get this started. You know what I mean? But you're obviously super confident, bro. You're a fucking stud with this shit.
I appreciate it.
Honestly, when I'm at my, 12-year anniversary of podcasting, I hope I'm just halfway as far as you are, bro. Seriously.
You're on the right track, man. You're definitely on the right track. And I got to give you kudos for convincing me to go to my storage unit to dig out this hot ass afro and sit in front of these beaming lights. I cannot say, out of all the years I've podcasted, I've never thought to do a dressed up Halloween episode. And you know what I'm saying? That is what I love about the JPU and meeting other podcasters, is it's inspired me to try new things. It's, opened up my perspective, and it just continues to show me that there's a lot. I think the fun part of podcasting is making your own show. I don't answer to no one. I don't have to run my episodes by anyone. I can make it sound how I want. It's a blank canvas. And as someone who loved podcasting early on, and I don't know, it was a fun opportunity to. I can't draw, I can't write, but man, I can produce. I can make this is something I made, with my hands, with my blood, sweat, and tears, and it's very prideful, like 100%. being in this long and having created something that resonates with people. Like it's such a humbling and beautiful thing, and I happen to have be able to do cool stuff with it. Like it, I could die happy.
Where can these people find you, like, as an actual creator? It's like so much to take in because I'll ask him a question, but then I've got like 20 more questions I can ask him. I'm sitting here, I'm like, I don't want this dude to fucking like be here all night. You know what I'm saying?
No,
I know he's got a life to do, and he even mentioned he's got to edit his own.
Yeah, actually, I got to edit a show tonight so I can get it out on time. But I know you're a professional, so I know you'll have all my links in the in the show notes and all that. Yes, but yeah, once again, Jack's Podcasters United for any podcasters that are in the Northeast Florida area. Even if you're not and you're willing to make that drive, more power to you. JacksPodcastersUnited.com and the Shortbox Podcast, wherever you find podcasts. Yeah, Apple Music, Spotify, all that stuff. We're on every single platform, right?
Yeah,
but going this long, I better be on every single platform,
100%, bro. Just like this podcast.
He built those platforms.
So after you guys,
sorry,
that was a good one. That was good.
So damn true. I'm sure it feels like it too.
Sometimes it's like, man, actually, like I'm kind of having a mind blowing moment. Like, wow, Spotify didn't have podcasts at some point.
No, that is a crazy thought, bro. Because especially since we've been on this, Spotify's definitely had it. But after you guys get done watching Badr's episode of this podcast, make sure you go and check out his podcast, The Shortbox. Obviously, make sure when you guys check out that podcast, you give it that 5-star rating. Make sure you subscribe. Check it out. Just do everything you can to support him and everything he's doing. Because, man, I love to see you win, brother, and you're absolutely killing it, bro.
Thank you, man. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Hell yeah.
It's been a good time. Joe, you got anything?
Nope. I think that's it.
Awesome, man. So this is another episode of the OG Sessions podcast. I am Barnacle Boy, and this is Mermaid Man, and we are out.
Peace.